Hello, this is the voice of Stewart Pearce, and welcome to my series of deep dialogues. These are vital conversations I engage in with global soul stewards from all over the planet, providing us with vital understandings about how we can create a new hierarchy of values to help us evolve into a brave new world. I hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening. And of course, namaste, namaste to our wonderful guest, ELENA, who has been on before, and I couldn't wait for her to come back for a second time because she is absolutely iridescent, as you will see. So welcome, Tara Jean, Lois. Everybody's going to be whizzing in, I know now. So welcome, everybody. Namaste, namaste. We are living at a very exciting time, and I know that ELENA and I are going to really focus into the transmissions of consciousness that are affecting us at this time and how we can really see ourselves as being the master mistress of our destiny rather than being caught up in the waves of fear that are being emitted, particularly from the war-torn zones of Palestine and the Ukraine. So we have this very beautiful lady, as we see in front of us, who normally resides in Florida, but at the moment is actually in the wonderful city of Paris, in this beautiful apartment, which I am very envious of. Let me just give you a little bit of information about her bio. So ELENA is the founder of the Holistic Quantum Healer Institute. It also has a #1 bestseller in holistic medicine through Amazon. She is a pioneer in the field of functional, regenerative, and quantum medicine. Now, her journey began 25 years ago as a clinical pharmacist, yet she then became certified in functional, regenerative, anti-aging, and quantum medicine, helping thousands of people globally to find healing, inner peace, vibrant wholeness, and, of course, profound constitutional balance, whilst at the same time reclaiming energy using proven natural programs. Together with her wonderful partner Alejandro, they have created a groundbreaking vibrational frequency system which analyzes the quantum field of the individual using scalar wave technology, and which has currently read the energy systems of thousands of people around the globe, including Stewart Pearce, whilst at the same time helping to raise the consciousness of the collective humanity. And we'll make sure that you see very clearly ELENA's website on the screen towards the end of our conversation. Please feel free to be as attentive as you normally are, Lewis, asking some wonderful questions. And so, again, from the depth of my heart, welcome back on to Deep Dialogues. It's always so wonderful to have you here because of the iridescence of your clarity. What's your secret?
Stewart, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our deep dialogue today. My secret, gosh, I think living in my heart. Living in my heart is the secret. Yeah.
But you have this extraordinary balanced mind, body, spirit constitution, don't you? Which you really are walking your talk. You're walking this extraordinary path of illumination, which is so beautiful. So we can all feel the pulsation of your radiance. It's so beautiful. But one of the fascinating aspects of your work is the way that you bring the substance of sacred geometry into the healing of our bodies, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And I wonder if you can just give us a little bit of a landscape definition about what you're referring to when you speak of the geometry of health.
Yes. So as many of your audience members probably know or have heard, especially traveling to Egypt, looking at ancient sacred sites, sacred geometry has been part of the human evolutionary process from the beginning of time. And more science And this is very important information because scientists now are looking into how sacred geometry can help in ways, for example, they've done experiments at the University of Chicago, applying different shapes to see what happens with stem cells. As many people probably are not aware, but all our cells are identical. So imagine subjecting stem cells to different shapes, whether it's a star shape or a flower shape, depending on what shape stem cells were subjected to, it manifested a completely different result. In one study, they looked at where the star-shaped actually helped form bone, and flower-shaped help form fat cells. And this is all from identical cells. So there's so many different ways. Now science is also looking into viruses and how viruses can be activated by creating these very specific cages based on geometrical patterns. So more and more scientists are looking into it, researching. Of course, now pharmaceutical industry is also looking into it, but there's so many wonderful ways that you yourself can apply sacred geometry in your life. And this is actually something that I teach, of how you can test yourself and find out what organ system is out of balance and what specific sacred geometrical pattern will help heal or reharmonize, rebalance that particular system in the body.
Wow, fascinating, fascinating. And the definition of which geometric form aligns with any of the organic tissue within our body. Are you choosing the 5 platonic solids, or are you moving beyond into the flower of life? What geometric forms are you drawing on? Because in classicism, of course, we have a whole rich array, almost, dare I say, a symphony of different geometries that can be used.
Yes. So we're actually using 5 platonic solids plus, as you said, the symphony of everything else. And what we're finding is, yes, some basic shapes absolutely work, but then we have to go far beyond just the basic shape of platonic solid and go into things like flower of life or vesica, Pisces as well. So it just depends on what the person needs.
Yeah, yeah. And so is there a generic form, a generic geometric form for the heart?
I wish I can say that's actually testing now hundreds of people, because I've been also teaching this in my classes. What I'm finding is there is not one specific shape. Many people think there is. It could be the icosahedron, which is a bridge oftentimes to the and representation of the heart chakra, but that is not always the case. This is why I teach that everything has to be specifically tested for each individual, because we're all unique. We all have different blueprints, and therefore a certain shape might be the right one for us, but not necessarily for another person.
Amazing, amazing. And so the induction of either thought form, of, for example, someone concentrating on a geometric form that is a classical pattern, a classical formation, um, could induce the heart or any of the other organs to shift its consciousness into the shape of the geometry to bring about profound pattern forming healing mechanisms.
Absolutely. You can meditate on shapes, you can draw the shapes, you can just be in the present of shapes. And this is what I often talk about, that what we surround ourselves with, including our artwork, plays an integral role in how it shapes our reality. Because we don't have to necessarily look at an object, but if it's in our biofield, in our auric field, it will absolutely create either detrimental impact, which can take your energy, or it can elevate your energy and then support the healing process. So absolutely, yes.
And intuitively, do you feel drawn to a particular shape for your own harmonic symphony?
Yes, for me lately, so I go through different periods, right? So lately for me, it has been a spiral. And I'm actually finding that a spiral I've been using in the last month, especially. And there's two different ways you can draw a spiral. You can draw it in a clockwise direction or a counterclockwise direction. Counterclockwise direction actually removes things from the physical, taking it into the spirit, and then the other way around. So what I'm finding when we are subjected to a lot of psychological warfare, which in the last month we're seeing it, it's important to take note of yourself. And then in my case, this is what I've been doing. And I've been finding that a spiral in the last month has been extremely helpful.
Wow. Wow. You mentioned the feminine vector and how it creates its own particular shift in intelligence. And the masculine vector, the clockwise direction, would create, what significance would it create?
So it will be going from the spirit to the matter.
Right. How fascinating, because one of the profound awarenesses that I've come to through the substance of sound within our bodies is that, as we've shared before, that we each have a note, and that if we're actually really working on the magnetic frequency of drawing people into our note, which is housed, as it were, in the seat of the soul, of the heart, that a very profound magnetic frequency begins to take place. If we're working conversely with the outgoing energy, it becomes purely electrical, and that's when we become disturbed by noise. When we're working on magnetic degrees, it's automatically opening up through our common humanity, through that aspect of our sympathetic magic. It opens up this huge wave of energy that draws people in to the process of entrainment. Whereas when we're moving on the masculine vector, if we're using corrupt means, automatically it creates division and dispelling, and the noise that I hear so often in the Western world at this moment, where everybody's, caught up in this sort of thing here, etc., etc. And of course, we know that we are each competing against the noise of our own currency, our own electrical currency inside, as well as the noise of the machines on the outside, and the noise of the gross levels of opinionation that seem to be pixelating our sonic environment at this time. This is absolutely amazing. So, of course, it brings to mind two things. Firstly, the importance of the way that we shape our own bodies in geometric patterns, the way that we live within certain containers that are harmonious. So it brings in generally speaking, the wonderful influence and inspiration of feng shui, and how feng shui is based purely on geometric forms. And then, of course, into this other aspect that you just touched on, which is the psychological warfare that is being used at this time. And of course, I have images occurring in my consciousness as you speak of Dr. Masaru Emoto's work, and how so many of the geometries of the frozen crystals that were to do with, for example, I hate you, or Adolf Hitler, that they were these completely messy, dark patterns. And as soon as we move into the classical frequencies that are all geometric, released through musicology, the Freemasons knew all about this because they knew that certain major or minor keys would affect the electrical fluid, the cerebral fluid within the spine and the brain. So that brings you into a certain state of harmony, which is why listening to 5 minutes of Mozart a day will create a genius in anybody. It alters the spatials within the body. But to speak to us about your discoveries, and I know much of it is actually based on a very discernible thought, from your wonderful, rich background of science, but also you're this wonderful intuitive that feels things so deeply. Could you perhaps give us a wave of energy in relation to how you perceive the psychological warfare at this time, what its detriment is, and then also how you are encouraging people to move into a band of healing where we are protected from the very perfidious stuff that's taking place? Because so much of it's so dark and insidious.
Well, thank you for this question. What I'd like to share, and you and I have not talked about it yet, but October 7th, I actually released a video in the morning. I woke up And a friend of mine who's also extremely intuitive, she wrote to me, something happened. Can you please test the collective consciousness and see what happened? And then Alejandro and I, of course, using scalar wave technology, tested the collective of all human beings on this planet. And we saw that vibrational frequency drop. This was first thing in the morning. And not only that, I think you and I talked about a while back that there's two gates of entry into our being. There's a physical gate of entry where you can physically get hurt. You can have a physical injury. And then there's something that's called soul gate. So the soul gate for human collective on October 7th was hijacked. It was breached. And on that particular day, it was breached by 28%. And people will say, well, what does it mean? So your soul gate is supposed to be sealed at all times. It's between you and your divine self. Nothing else is supposed to interfere. So what happened was there's a breach. So when there is a breach, that means any kind of negative thought forms, entities can penetrate and influence you. So imagine collectively, this is what happened. Then 5 days later, there was again energetic attack that happened. So we're not speaking just what's happening in a physical reality. We're talking about from energy point of view. And at that time, I think the soul gate was hijacked about 38%. And then on the 18th of October, it was hijacked at 41%. So it's showing to us that there is definitely a psychological warfare that is happening on a totally different level, and it's manifesting in the physical reality. So then a person might say, well, what do you do about it? I did not allow for my soul gate to be hijacked, right? People will say that. So therefore, it's an invitation for every human being who is aware, who is conscious, to tune in and begin to see yourself, to run through your heart and ask yourself, are there limiting beliefs that are showing up in my life? Because as we're seeing right now, all the belief systems are being brought to the surface, the belief systems that obviously have not worked for centuries. They were the result of the war that's been raging on this planet for centuries. So therefore, it's an invitation to go in the heart and finally let go of whatever has been programmed into you, whether it's through your family, through religious institutions, through schools, or perhaps you've inherited certain ideas genetically, which is also a very real thing. So this psychological warfare is enhanced, and therefore it's important to take care of each individual at the moment right now, to go within, to run through the heart and just keep asking yourself, am I speaking from compassion and love? Or am I fueling and expanding the psychological warfare that is raging at the moment? And it's hijacking so many people. And it's really holding people hostage. But then we all have free will. Yes, events can happen, but ultimately the decision lies with us. What is the choice that you're going to make on a daily basis? Are you going to make your choice living your life from your heart, from your love, from a higher state of consciousness, or expanding on the lower frequencies, which is definitely fueling the psychological warfare that is going on at the moment?
You speak with such concision, such clarity that we see it so clearly. And as a result, waves of hope pour through what you're saying, which is absolutely beautiful, because we begin to see where the detritus lies, where the horror of worship lies. And we know that many people are lying under that field of energy, that physically dense field of energy that have been maimed, or indeed they possibly lost their lives. Within their contract, I believe that there is actually there is the right of sacrifice that they're choosing to go at this time to open the fields of energy that seals the soul gate. So thank you for that wonderful wave of hope that came through. Of course, what's in the forefront of our consciousness is, what can I do specifically in this context to make sure that my soul gate is sealed? And secondly, How can I keep refurbishing my body, revitalizing my body, so that I have a sustainable element of balance, of joy, of love, and
Mhm.
of the continuing consciousness that you've just shared with us of empathy and compassion? And thirdly, what can we do about those people that are caught within the veil of darkness?
Mm. Well, there's so many things. I'm sure many of you viewers have been learning for years how to eat healthy, perhaps taking care of their thought patterns. Now is the time to really bring all of the tools, everything you have ever learned. Now is the time to put it to practice. How to seal your soul gate. I would say if you practice daily meditation, just tune in, feel into your physical body, into your auric field, and see if there's any distortions, any holes. And I would say low vibrational thoughts are not, or emotions are not necessarily bad. So it's important that you allow yourself to grieve. It's important that you acknowledge sadness, right? These are all valuable emotions that are flowing, I'm sure, through every human being. No one is exempt from not feeling it and not empathizing with what is happening. But it's important not to get caught up in it. So every day, start as a new day. Start with your practice, meditation, taking care of your physical body, eating healthy, moving. Um, some days, I'm sure, will be a challenge to where it will be difficult to entertain joy and happiness in such difficult times, but try to find, even if it's a few minutes a day, whether it's listening to Mozart or drawing or laughing. I think laughter is so important right now to keep yourself connected to your heart. So joy, laughter. And as far as worrying about people that are caught up in the darkness, I think it is not our job, it is not our responsibility to worry about shifting people who are in the absolute abyss of darkness. I know that for me, this is not my job. This is not why I came here. And my mission. I am here to help raise the collective consciousness for those
Mm,
people that are ready to hear it. But again, being caught up in those lower vibrational frequencies is not going to support keeping
mm,
our soul gate clear, sealed, including keeping our physical system functioning at an optimal level.
mm. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And so there is this specific element of vigilance, of being really present at this time, and the waves of concern, the waves of conflict that we pick up from all of our communication devices. This needs to be regulated in a very discerning way. So everybody, what we're really hinting towards is, please go on a news fast. You will receive the most significant things at the right time, but be very delicate about the way that you absorb the information. Many of the people that are coming to me at the moment, and I've seen this progressively over the last 7 weeks, that they come and they have huge tears in their energy field around specific chakras. And this, this is something that I've been conscious of for many, many, many years. And much of the work that I do with the angels is about repairing, of suturing the tears that are often in people, as it were, from a psychic point of view. And automatically there's a relief felt within the dense physical body. And particularly the tears are around the lower chakras, where the fear-based activities lie, particularly when we lose sight of our identity, first, second, third chakra. So we feel a lack of will rather than the willpower of moving ourselves forward in courage, in forthrightness, in discernment, in truth, and of course then making the choice about allowing the heart chakra to really spin. I wondered if when you were talking about the soul gates, I wonder if the soul gate is associated with the 11th, with the soul star.
So there's several layers to where the soul gate is. I will say yes. The other place that I see impact as far as the soul gate, it actually impacts the crown chakra. And this has to do with people's disconnect from the divine and the trust in the divine. And this is where we're also seeing why we're seeing so many wars, right? And why we're seeing this abyss of darkness, because it is absolute disconnect from the collective of
Yes.
love and unity. So yes, you can say the soul gate is in the higher chakras, but it does impact the crown chakra as well. It's almost like people are blindfolded and they cannot see where to go next.
Yeah. 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 And as we open from this particular aspect of our dialogue and look broadly at what's taking place in the Western world, as you scan so many of the ripples of thought that are taking place, that are awakening, the crisis in relation to identity, the substance of woke culture, the rise of Islamophobia, and particularly not just simply within the communities that exist outside Islam, but also within Islam, in the sense that there's a percolating feature, which is one of gross anger that is moving them towards marching, in this instance, for pro-Palestinian causes and claiming jihad, jihad, jihad. As we look into the broad substance of it, it seems that the elements that we've held as specific jewels within Western civilization are really being affected in a very adverse way. Is this something that you're also, is this coming into your consciousness? Are you seeing in a in the broad landscape what's taking place? Because I'm just linking in with what you were saying about our divinity, of reminding ourselves constantly that we are children of God, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, but really experientializing what that's all about, rather than just simply connecting with the idea as being an image or a piece of poesy, a piece of poetry that's nice, no, what does it mean to be a spiritual being having a human experience, that we are divine? And one of the things that I see in much of the anger that's permeating through our world is that there is many people are not associating with the sacred nature of what it is to be a human.
Mm.
And that leads us to that core principle of, where do I center most within the divinity of my being, and how do I develop my sovereignty?
I think for centuries, people have relied on religions to to connect to divinity, thinking that we need that translator between us and the creator or creation itself. And I think that this is where we're seeing now every system is falling apart. And
Yeah.
this is the division that is showing up. And the images you were speaking actually showed up for me, the image of Lucifer, the fallen angel, right? And how he fell from this divine realm into the abyss of darkness. And I think this is what's happening on an energetic level with humanity at the moment, because it's, as you see, the battle of egos of whose religion is more powerful, who is going, what religious organizations, or this is the group of people to blame now, or this group of people. That's why we're seeing, right, this Islamophobia, as you said, anti-Semitism, all of it is being brought up to the surface because it is time. It is time for people to clear this old paradigm that is not working. And if, last year we looked at the vibrational frequencies of collective consciousness of different parts of the world. And already last year we could see, based on these frequencies, that there were massive issues that were stirring up around the globe, especially in the region right now that we're talking about. And it's interesting how it's manifesting. So yes, as you said, people are connecting and shouting these things that are supposed to be under religious pretense, but it's not, because it's so far away from what, is really, if you think about a truly honorably religious human being, in my world, would be somebody who's really living in their heart and who is
Yes.
supporting all life on this planet, right? Versus this dark, disassociated parts of ourselves. So I would say that it's actually a mirror reflection of what's happening in the world, because we're all connected. It is showing something to us collectively. It is shining a mirror to look deep within. What is our deepest wound? It's an invitation for every one of us to look and say, wow, this is a part of me that I have not attended to. I've been scared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a heralding call to get really honest and recognize that what we're seeing on the outside of us in the conflicts are really a mirror image of what's going on within. And as soon as we heal the interior, that will just simply automatically regulate itself. I mean, I'm making it sound as though it's really, really simple. But, you know,
But it should be, right, Stuart? It should be. I mean, like,
want
part of
to
me just wants to go and say, in that region, can we just hold one another? But we don't see this conversation happening online. Can we just hold one another and see and acknowledge? We're not seeing this intermediary conversation that is inviting and saying, I hear you, I see you. It's shouting, right? And this anger and hate that's bubbling up, but it's all discombobulated, disconnected.
Yeah, yeah. You know, one of the things that I found really fascinating, this is a long time ago, it's about 25 years ago, maybe a little bit more. I was invited to run a retreat in the Sinai for a group of Palestinian women, and it was all women except for myself, and and a policeman, security guy that we had, and Jewish women. And of course, when we began, as they entered the space, there was an immense amount of suspicion, an immense amount of fear, an immense amount of repudiation, you know, nothing hostile, but you would just feel the energy in the atmosphere, understandably. And the substance of the retreat was on the substance of grieving. So they each spoke about, in a very sectarian way to begin with, what the essence of their suffering was all about. And automatically, the energy began to shift. And so once we processed this and people were genuinely, completely authentic and in their hearts, and we were beginning to see the monumental nature of the suffering that each tribe had experienced, I then asked them if they would build altars to their ancestors. And so that took some time, and they were able to use natural elements from the desert. You know, they became very resourceful. What do I use? Well, just get ingenious. And then once that, you know, after an hour or whatever it was that I gave them to create these altars, that the whole of the group went to each altar and allowed the individual to introduce us to their ancestors. And that's when the weeping began. The weeping of healing began. So that by the time we got to the end, we had gone through this monumental catharsis. And each group of women was so interwoven that there was hugging and kissing and pledges being made that they would never, ever, ever revert back to the indoctrinized nature of what the sectarian divides or, you know, wounds were all about. It was absolutely extraordinary. And I shall never forget going to bed that night feeling joyous and really fulfilled that it had worked. But I remember not sleeping all night because the ancestors were continuously walking through my bed, having conversations with me. And I remember waking in the morning very, very early before dawn and walking from the kibbutz center down to the Dead Sea and just dipping in the Dead Sea and purifying my body with the salt of the Dead Sea. And then noticing how somehow each of the women had felt the same response. And there they were walking from their rooms in the kibbutz down to the Dead Sea to be again revitalized by this sacred presence of the geometry of the salt in the water. I don't know if you've been to the Dead Sea. You know, it's most peculiar because you
I have
can't.
not been to Israel. I've wanted to, and we just never made it there. I hope we'll be able to go there someday soon. Yes. But what a
And of course,
profound thing you've done, Stuart, you know, just because I think we need more of what you have done, as you said, over 20 years ago. Can you imagine doing this on a global scale?
Oh, indeed, indeed. Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, and now that we seem to have got over COVID, although there are leakages in unusual countries like Canada. I had two people who were coming on the retreat saying, we can't come because we're going to have COVID. There's going to be a mass lockdown. And I said, well, intuitively, I've touched into this, and I do not believe that this is so. So I feel that this is a perfect opportunity for us to really talk about fear and see ways of being able to exorcise the fear. However, we seem to be over COVID, so it's time to really decide what paradisic or idyllic a landscape can we go into that is beneficial and ameliorative to help us within the ritualized processes of going deep, deep, deep into the causative nature of our consciousness. Of course, the big problem is the way that the intellect has been encouraged to live egoically for so long, and that there's so much ideological pressure around. And really, what we're talking about is that we need to just simply be clear with thought, but place the ideological transmissions just over here in the background so that we can really move into the neurology of what experience is all about and cleanse whatever part of our neurological makeup from all of these really, really deep karmic lesions. And as a result of that, I believe that miracles will take place. I mean, I've seen so many different things in my 70 years of really recognizing how profound healing can come about when we are working in conjunction with what I've just described, and of course with the neurology or the neural pathways of the Gaia. And so when you speak of the geometry of health, all of that is awakening within my consciousness because it's something that I've always seen, the geometric patterns within the geomantic nature of the earth. And of course, you know, the way that we can look into certain landscapes and see profound formations of energy and how these can also heal us. I think you felt this. I seem to remember when you were talking about going to the Bosnian Pyramids that you really felt this.
Yeah, for me, as you know, I've gone to Egypt, going back again in February, but Bosnia holds a very special place in my heart. Initially, we went there, we weren't sure what we were going to feel. And this year, for the second time, we went and brought 30 people to Bosnian Pyramids, and the energy there is just so pure. Everything around that region is unadulterated. Their food is clean, water is pure, the energy inside, you can sit and meditate for hours. And there's so many healing miracles that happen at the Bosnian Pyramid site, sitting in the tunnels. So for anyone that has an opportunity to go, this is just a magnificent, beautiful place to escape in a way that is really difficult, I would say, to find nowadays, especially place like that in the world that is just there energetically supporting each individual in the process of healing in whatever shape or form it might be.
Mm, mm, mm. Just sort of tuning in, I'm noticing our time is sort of rushing past, of course. Just tuning into you wonderful people in the comment box. Thank you so much for scribbling away. I wondered if you have any questions derived from our conversation particularly for ELENA. Anybody? Thank you for saying you love this dialogue. I'm loving it as well. So I'm glad you're feeling the vibe. Are there any questions? Is Mozart music based on the Platonic solids? Yes. Look into the Mozart Effect, the book, The Mozart Effect, which was written by one of the famous violinists of the Amadeus Quartet, who specialized obviously in music, in Mozart's music. And he's a profound musicologist as well as being this adept violinist. And he wrote this wonderful book, so you'll see what I was talking about. Are there any questions you'd like to ask? Please let us know. We were going to move into talking about well, I suppose we've really done it, the sweeping changes that can take place within the collective consciousness, and how we must see ourselves not as being reduced in an absurd level of not humility, but in really being a hostage to the ego and diminishing ourselves through conceit, that we actually are all here as beacons of light at this time. We have chosen to incarnate, to be part of this spectacle, and we have a choice. So I don't think there's anything you can refer to about furthering skills or awarenesses that we can utilize about how we can literally protect our energy fields so that they don't become torn, or that you don't necessarily, feel any permeations through soul gates.
I think it became very clear during COVID in 2020 that something was happening to where there was massive split in humanity and fear was hijacking people, right? And now I feel it's even amplified further. The division is amplified further. The one thing I remember talking about a few years back, when people talked about, oh, so-and-so is doing this, so-and-so is not doing this, mask versus not masked. And I just thought, does it really matter what the other person is doing? If this is what makes them feel safe, taken care of, this is their decision. You have to worry about yourself. So right now, more than ever, again, we're talking about amplifying your boundaries. And as Stewart said earlier, it's important to minimize what you're watching, who you're communicating with. Is it elevating you, or is it bringing you down? So we're living through the times of boundaries. And I know that it's a challenge. I've had to let go of a few people in my life. It was one of the hardest things I had to do. And I couldn't sleep and cried for a couple of years over it. But at a certain point, you have to realize you have to respect yourself and your own well-being. And whatever or whoever is interfering with that really does not deserve to be part of your life. And it sounds simple, but it is much more complicated. So I would say boundaries, exercising extreme boundaries. Yeah.
I feel this is absolutely wonderful. And of course, we're not talking about the phenomenon of ghosting people. We're actually talking about having a conversation, which is a true conversation, but not one that is emitting blame and accusation, but a conversation that's full of insight and resolution about what one's own perception is, and that why we're choosing to make the choices that we're making. Yeah, I mean, similarly, it started with me, I think about 25 years ago, where I started to have very overt conversations with intimates, members of the family, who were speaking the rhetoric of war because of their anger. And how I was able to say, look, I need you to know that I can't be around this because I want to be a vessel of peace. And so what you're doing is actually compromising me on a fundamental level. And I cannot allow this to happen because of my service to mankind. And so I need you to know that I will always love you. I do not love this part of you, but I will always love the sacred nature of your heart. Now, goodbye, and I will never see you again. And I always felt very gleeful in doing it because I love, I have to be very careful about the neuroses of my organization because I can be a control freak about balancing things. But it always gives me this wonderful feeling of satisfaction when there is this recognition and respect of what has been shared on deep soul levels. And then when one looks into the behavior, which is malfunctional, not that it's right or wrong or good or bad, it's just inappropriate because of the way that it's toxic for one's own energy field and the way that one sees behavior being projected onto other people. The person that I'm thinking about, who is a soul sister of mine for over 26 years, I saw her cudgeling people into shape through her anger, in the supermarket, in the bank, in the store, in a gas station or whatever. And I tried constantly to inform what I felt was really happening for her and also for the people that she was cudgeling. Very, very powerful individual. And then I said, I need you to understand, if you ever do this to me, I cannot be around you. I really can't. So can we avoid that, please? And then, of course, I knew that it was a psychic spectre because a year later it came about. And this person, I saw the level of destruction in the person's eyes and in their soul. They wanted to literally destroy. So
And that's, I think, I was going to ask you, Stuart, because I think for many of the viewers, also people who are empathic, who feel that boundary is very difficult, because there's going to be people that are going to really try to break the boundaries and then call you up on it and say, well, you are the light, so you're supposed to explain yourself. And this is, for me, it's been an interesting 3-4 year journey of where I've realized you actually don't have to explain yourself. If someone is crossing a boundary, that's it.
Yeah,
you are holding your light. You're not responsible for their projections. And that, I think, is really key, and it's showing up on a global scale right now.
Yes, totally, totally. So there's no confrontation involved. I feel that's the most important thing, because that we know is very much of the old paradigm, and that we've all experienced that. We were all taught to confront through defense and through revenge. It's much more to do with what I teach in conflict resolution, which is carefrontation. I used to call it infronting, but infronting was a little bit too obscure and not fully clear. And then one day I suddenly thought, no, it's all about carefrontation, because actually I really care about this individual, which is why I need to say, as we would to an unruly child, no, this must not come to pass. Because this is all about separation. It is not about unity consciousness.
Yes.
Somebody's asking a question. Janine, thank you, my darling, for this question. ELENA, could you talk further about how to lovingly sustain the balance between boundaries while simultaneously maintaining an openness or receptivity to others, which I think we probably just touched on. Is there anything further that you can share? How do we sustain the balance of boundaries whilst also remaining open to the receptivity of others?
I think boundaries doesn't mean that you close your heart. I think you can still be in your heart, in your compassion and kindness, but be very firm with what you will no longer tolerate.
It's an
I've had
interesting
situations, where I've been around people that were not very nice, and I'm extremely sensitive. So for me, there is a boundary, but I'm also open to a hug, and have that embrace to where it shows that I'm still here. I'm me. I'm human.
Yes. And of course, it can be a celestial hug, not just literally a physical hug.
Yes, yes.
Where we wrap our field around them rather than, I'm just thinking about some of the people who are so hell-bent on releasing their anger that that if you just by stepping one place forward, you automatically feel the permeations of the anger. It requires a great deal of presence, doesn't it? So the emotional management of our body is really, in terms of emotional intelligence, is really, really very specific. Yeah, one of the instruments that I use is that this is not for me personally. This is actually me working as a world servant, allowing the collective to be nourished by the peacemaking gesture of what this is actually all about, rather than just working on the myopia of the individual, my needs, their needs, or whatever. And so hopefully that's been useful. Many people don't know even that they disturb other there is something called a non-presence, or worse still, ignorance. So that sort of goes without saying. Hopefully this has been clear to you all as we've exchanged. Lauren, I call these challenges my Jedi trainers. That's great, isn't it?
That's a good one. Yes.
So that's exquisite, isn't it? Because it means that we're really beginning to, rather like a great spiritual gymnast, we're really beginning to lift ourselves high in the air, over the fence, or over the, I'm thinking of a pole vaulter, because we see that the challenge is really just an exquisite test that we brought into the pathway of our own predestined incarnation. And it's all about becoming a Jedi. So, from an archetypal point of view, much of our conversation has been about the acquisition of the priest within, the lover priest within, the lover priestess within. But this latter part of our conversation, our dialogue, has been about developing the spiritual warrior that is not a professional soldier, that the spiritual warrior works through peace rather than through enmity. It's really what the great Gandhi, the Mahatma Gandhi, showed us and then taught Martin Luther King through nonviolent peaceful protest. Aldous Huxley said, according to Burbank, interesting name, Burbank Luther, quit being an angry ape, playing such fantastic tricks before high heaven as make the angels weep. I want that, Burbank. That's amazing. Ryan, please make a note of that quote. Quit being an angry ape, playing such fantastic tricks before high heaven as make the angels weep. That's beautiful. Thank you, Burbank. Illustrious name. How do you detect, recognize a tear in the energy field? The simplest answer is heaven knows. Well, I mean, you've experienced this in the dear
I
ones
mean, the
that
way
come.
that we do it is we actually use a person's photograph and the name, and we use scalar wave technology to read everything about a person's field. And that is just one of the aspects that we detect. But collectively, you can actually read the collective field and read it through the technology that we use. So that's one of the ways. But individually, I'm sure Stewart will share how he tunes into that.
Yeah, well, it's the clairsentience that I have, that I've
Mhm.
always had. And that was mixed with synesthesia, with a crossover of the senses. So I was always seeing force. And so when I see somebody who is walking towards me, as we see in Barbara Brennan's work, Hands of Light, that who is in torment, but isn't necessarily conscious of their torment, I can see how their field is leaking. And then
Mm.
in gentle conversation, they begin to talk about primary levels of dissipation where they're feeling so exhausted, and particularly around the spleen or the gallbladder, i.e., the second or the third chakra, and that they feel lackluster, they feel in a torpor where they can't make choices, they feel stuck, and then automatically there's some form of biological breakdown where they start to become, irritable bowel syndrome, or constipated, or a lack of sexual urge, or intolerable weeping, etc., etc. All of these physiological manifestations, and then pains in the body. Exactly, Jen. Yes. Automatically, then one begins to feel where the tear is. And I always work respectfully and honoringly with the individual by saying, tell me, where do you feel the center of the holding is? And what I do then is to play the color game by saying, okay, tell me, what is the color of this center of
Mhm.
pain? Well, dark black. Okay, good. And then they say, going to the center of the dark black, and they say, well, actually, I'm seeing this really dirty red color. Wow, how interesting. Base chakra. Okay, go into the red. What do you see? Oh, this ugly, ugly purple, which is always to do with primary depression, the higher chakra, crown chakra. Okay, now what do you see? Oh, I'm seeing this extraordinary white light. Does it change, or is it consistent? No, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's when I start to go deep into a supernatural healing, where I call on the angels, take the dear one through a deep meditative hypnotherapeutic process where we literally go into the tunnel of life and into the nature of the numinous, the billowing nature of the silver white energy, where they feel completely held, where they feel identified, acknowledged, and honored by the dear ones that come forth, whether they're spirit guardians or angels, ascended masters and mistresses, or indeed dead people, that they've, and something remarkable happens where the tear is then sutured up by the angels. Anyway, so that's how I do it.
That's
Any other
beautiful.
questions? Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay, so discover your vibrational frequency. So we've spoken very openly, very generically about the vibrational frequency of ourselves. And it seems to me that what we're encouraging is that through presence, through due diligence and devotion, for our exquisite sensitivity and acknowledgement of our soulfulness, our divinity, that we're moving deeper and deeper and deeper into a true respect of our energy field and therefore of our vibrational frequency. Are there any other points that come to your consciousness about how you define that for someone who is maybe a virgin, in terms of discovering the work for the first time or just beginning their initiation?
Yes. So Alejandra and I, my other half, we look at over 36 different points into each individual being. So it's important to look at different aspects because we're not just one vibrational frequency. The way we perceive reality related to different things could have its own vibrational signature. So for example, we look into how a person incarnates. So the frequency that we incarnate, the moment of conception, is when we choose a frequency and how we want to experience our reality. It doesn't mean that this is going to be the highest or the lowest frequency. This is the first point. Then we look into a birth point. How is the person born? And usually, in most cases, there is a vibrational frequency drop from incarnation to birth. And we look into what are some of the things that contributed to that vibrational frequency drop in utero. And as you see now, science is also looking into how that space, in uterus space, is a place where all the imprints, genetic imprints, environmental, epigenetics, this is what happens, right? So we look and see what was the mother's environment, and those become the emotions that the baby inherits. Then we look into the frequency of where a person stands today, because it's important for them to see overall how they view their reality. And then from there, we go into how people relate to themselves and others, how they view finances, health, and under health, body, mind, and soul, because each aspect is a relationship. Then we look into creativity. People say, how do I raise my vibrational frequency? And we always say that creativity is all about what inspires a person. And when they feel inspired, how do they take action? And creativity is the simplest way to connect to our inner child, to the joy, that place of being in the awe, and be able to raise your vibrational frequency, whether it's through art, dance, whatever it might be. A lot of times people don't think they're creative, but everyone is creative because we're creating our own reality. Personal growth is another thing. If you are absolutely committed to your personal growth, guess what? It's going to help raise your vibrational frequency as well because you're so committed to that journey. Then it's about intuition. How do you relate to intuition? There's 4 different aspects of intuition that we measure. Then we look at different levels of intelligence, your IQ, which is intellect, your EQ, emotional intelligence, which is far superior than intellect. Then we have something that's called SQ, and this is how you are around other people, or AQ, how do you deal with adversity? These are important points for you to look into deep within to see how do you deal with challenging times in your life. What is the programming that is being triggered? And this is really important because if you have lower vibrational frequencies, I always say it's a gift to know what they are because it gives you an opportunity to shift out of it. And then the rest of the numbers are percentages. So we look at how much a person enjoys playing their role, because we all play a role in this reality, whether we choose to be in the light or in the shadow. Everyone matters. Everyone is important. Some people literally come here to be in the shadow, and we call them the Great Awakeners. Those are the darkest forces. They're masters of the dark, just like the rest of us who could become masters of the light. And the dark forces are here to push the light. It's supporting for us, creating enough contrast for us to really begin to embody the light. Then we look at the ego, right? What is ego? Ego is information. How much do you attach to the information, which, Stewart, you talked about, right? That we are so attached to that information that we don't really know who we are. So this also becomes an invitation. How much do you attach to that what is known, versus allowing for the divine to flow through you and trusting that, allowing to step yourself, to give give a step back, looking into the now, your self-awareness, your clarity, your alignment with divine and personal purpose. People always want to know how aligned I am. And I will say the most important number, if you want to know where you are in life, is how aligned you are with your divine purpose. Are you walking your divine path? Because the personal purpose is more related to your ego self. The divine purpose is part of your soul's blueprint, what you came here to experience, and how close are you to being aligned with that blueprint.
Wow. How's that, everybody? I mean, that's immaculate. So unfortunately, we've come to a point of completion in our time sequence. But Ryan, if you could possibly put ELENA's website detail up on the screen. Here you are, everybody. This is what, please scribble this down or make a note in some way, shape, or form digitally. And please go straight to ELENA's website afterwards, and you'll see the extraordinary programs and teachings and offerings that she's making in the world, which is you can see the genuineness and her love and the beauty which she dispatches all this information. As always, I want to thank you deeply from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure all of you. Somebody's asking how long you're staying in Paris. You're just there.
Tomorrow's the last day. Tomorrow's the last day.
Back to Florida. So you've been there for business and
5
also for leisure.
days.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, and hopefully you'll feel that we've had an energetic, a positive energetic experience, so you come back in the future. And so thank you very much on behalf of everybody. Really, namaste to you. You're doing such extraordinary work in the world, and for all of you seekers, I hope you'll also find us by the quality of this conversation. And I don't see Steve in the comment box today, so hopefully he'll be tuning in later. Sending you much love, and namaste. Don't forget, next Monday there will be somebody else coming along, the wonderful Jude Coravan, who is a quantum physicist but also an intuitive. So bless you all, and thank you, Ryan. Please stay where you are, and I'll come back to you in a moment, dear ELENA.
Thank you so much.